Okay, so how are you guys today? This is Ms. Horvath with your final step for your final project of sixth grade visual art. So at this point, I'm assuming that you have gotten your shading part all done. You can see that the only part left I would have to do with shading is continuing that dark value all the way out, since it does in fact continue. So you would want to go ahead and do that. But notice that I've got nothing on here is actually outlined to show edges. Now you might think, well, what about down here on the teeth? Or what about up here where there's that seam? Yeah, sometimes there are areas of shading that are in fact sort of like an outline. I would say if anything on the teeth there, I need to kind of lighten that part up because there's not actually on the real photograph, there's really not quite that much contrast where that edge is. My point is, if you're going to be putting anything that's even somewhat like an edge, you need to make sure that that's really what you're seeing. Now here, that's about the closest thing to an outline that there is on this whole thing. But notice that what it is not just a line, okay? It's actually got places where it's wider, where it's thinner. It's got a little bit of a different kind of edge there along the lighter part, which you can see I tried to kind of get. Just watch out that you're not just going through and outlining everything. You should see the differences between things because of a contrast. What you never, ever want to see in shading is that you put basically the same value on both sides and then just drew a line. That's what you don't want to see. And I have seen that a little bit on some of your warm-ups, so I want you to make sure you're carefully not doing that. Now, I did ask that you submit this step before you go to the final step, so please do not just truck ahead with the final step until you've taken care of the shading and submitted that, and I've said, yes, that's good. Okay, remember back to when we started out on this and I told you to put, G for graphite in those three and C for color in the other three, okay? At this time, you can go ahead and erase the C for color because obviously you don't need to see that anymore because you know which ones are going to be color. All right, the first thing that I'm going to have you do when you get ready to start the color part of this, actually, never mind what I just said. You're not going to do that. Haha, surprise. Okay, what you need for this part is colored pencils. How many colors, which colors, that's kind of up to you. I'm going to leave that sort of open-ended. I'm not going to say you can only use a certain number or anything like that. What I would say is try to make sure that you have some colors that contrast with each other. So here's some colors that I feel like are going to make a nice contrast together. And what you're going to be doing here is basically just, you can use the colors however you want. This is what we would call using non-local color. These don't really have to do with anything. So what I'm going to do is select an area, like this area here. And I'm kind of going around that area with heavy pressure to make basically an outline, which we aren't doing on the shaded part. And then what I'm going to have you do is in each area, I want you from that outer edge to make a gradation with color coming into the middle. So each area is going to be darker at the outside and lighter at the inside. Now, unlike with unlike with graphite, you cannot blend colored pencil very much with your finger. Sometimes, depending on the type of colored pencil, you can get it to blend just a little bit by rubbing it, but mostly what you have to do is just with lighter and lighter pressure, and again, we don't ever want it looking liney, so don't let that happen. But just with lighter and lighter pressure, we want it to be a gradation. Now, a couple of you, and I talked to you in your comments, a couple of you did have places where it should have been a gradation, maybe on your sphere, maybe on your gradation scale, where you had a spot where it just stopped being something and started being something else. Remember that would be a contrast. That would be like this area. It stops being one thing and starts being something else. That is not a gradation. We talked a lot about gradations earlier in the semester. It's like a fade, it's like an ombre, it's like whatever you want to think of it as that helps you remember what it really is, okay? Now I'm going to go ahead and go to my next spot, okay? And basically, this is just what you're going to do for the rest of it. You're going to do dark pressure with a color that contrasts each time. It doesn't really matter what color. That's up to you and what colors you have and what colors you want to use. Now, some people have some other kinds of colored pencils at home besides what I sent with you, and they might want to know, could I use those? I don't mind if you use other colors of colored pencils that you have at home. The only thing I would say is if what you have is rose art, I would really recommend you not use that. Crayola is okay. If you have anything fancier than Crayola, like Prang, or this is actually Prismacolors, which are extra fancy, those work great. Or you can just use the colors that you have in the bag. I know I didn't send you with very many different colors, but you should have enough to do this with, okay? Because you're just basically trying to make sure it's not the same color as what's next door. Okay, so in each of these areas, this is how you're gonna do it. Now, what if you want to use 2 colors in one area and a different 2 in another area and a different 2 in the last area? If you want to do things like that, that's cool. Like, I like you to get your own ideas and to, you know, think of how you could improve on what I told you and make it even cooler, as long as it's still within the guidelines. So, for example, can you start making lots and lots of patterns? Well, I didn't ask you to make patterns. This isn't really about patterns. You've had lots of projects to do patterns. This one I'm really just asking you more so to deal with gradation. And this time, the difference between what you're doing with gradation here and what you did with it on the graphite is that here you really cannot blend with paper towel. Like I said, you might be able to do just a teeny weeny bit of blending with a paper towel or something like that. I just don't think it's gonna do very much. Here's a little piece of paper towel. It's not like graphite, so you can see it actually is blending a tiny, tiny, tiny bit, but not like the graphite. And these are Prismacolors. I would think your Prangs probably would even do a little bit less than this. You can try it, but most of your gradation has to be with your pressure, okay? So again, I'm not gonna just, like I didn't earlier, I'm not gonna do this whole entire thing because like I feel like these videos are probably already non-exciting enough to sit here and watch an entire half an hour of Miss H coloring is probably not cool. Oh, by the way, is this just coloring? Really, it isn't, okay? Because when you're coloring, like in a coloring book, you're usually coloring everything a solid. You're usually not changing your pressure. You're usually not paying attention to gradation. But here, this is not just coloring. Although you could use this technique in a coloring book, and it actually would be kind of cool. But what I'm asking here is smooth gradation, where it's darker at the outside of each area, and smoothly having a gradation or a fade or a blend into a center, okay? So that you don't see an edge between them, all right? What about the outside part? The outside part, I'm gonna let you decide what you wanna do with it. I don't want you leaving it blank. Leaving it blank will end up taking points off your personal, off of your creativity part of this. So you do have to do something with it. If you have your Sharpie, that might be a fun time to do something with Sharpie, like patterns or lines, or even if you wanna like write some things about like what's been going on with you, as long as it looks neat and carefully done. All right, what you don't want this part to look like is empty. No, don't do that. Messy. Don't do that. Something that kind of looks random, like you just threw it together really fast and didn't think much about it. Don't do that. You want to do something out here that is interesting, that looks good, that is going to add to your piece. What about the other sections? Well, I think you already heard me say you're going to do this colored pencil thing with all the sections. It's just that I'm not going to stand here and do all of the sections on this video because that's too boring, okay? So same kind of idea. You can use different colors. You can use the same colors as long as what's next door to itself isn't the exact same color. Gradation from dark to light. Notice how I'm kind of going back and forth with different directions. Remember back to the one shading video where they said, I think it was the one with the lady, where she said, you know, try doing a little bit at a time rather than covering a whole bunch. That counts with these colored pencils too, okay? Because if you try to color the whole thing, it's really hard to control your pressure. It's really hard to pay attention to whether you're getting a gradation. So don't try to do the whole thing really fast. This doesn't actually take that long, but you're also not aiming to see how quick you can do it. I would hope that's never what you're attempting to do in art, okay? Each section, outline it, dark pressure, gradation to the center of that area so that you can practice creating gradations with a different drawing medium besides pencil. Okay, and then the outside, you've got 3 different sections that have an outside area, right? 1, 2, 3, and that is where you get to use your creativity to decide what you're gonna do out there so that you have a colored pencil area in each section. Whoops, that lead needs to be sharpened. And you have the outer part having that Sharpie kind of part to it. And then you have the other 3 parts being shaded, okay? So that will be your final thing. Once you get that done, just go ahead and submit it to that same Dropbox. And I'll take a look at it and I will grade it. And that will be it for you. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. But I would hope that nobody is asking me questions if they haven't watched the video. Of course, if you're watching this video and hearing me say this, then obviously you did watch the video. But sometimes I've gotten questions that make me wonder whether somebody did watch the video or not. Okay? But let me know if you do have any questions, and I will try to get back to you as quick as possible. And I will hope to see you guys on the Zoom today. All right. Bye.